Hey everybody, so today we're going to be talking about the news story coming out of Toronto and the Toronto Police Service about their discrimination and their actions against Black, Asian, and Latino people. How it's been very disproportionate to the percentage of the population and has just been seen as straight up racism in the Toronto Police Service. So let's watch and see what CP24 says. We're going to talk about it. We're going to hear what they're actually going to say, and then we're going to react to that. So let's go ahead and listen to their report.
Race-based data in policing has the city's top cop apologizing. Toronto's interim police chief, James Raymer, apologized to the city's racialized community earlier today. The statistics show Black and Indigenous people faced a disproportionate amount of enforcement and use of force in 2020 compared to white people. Raymer admitted not enough has been done to ensure fair and unbiased treatment.
On behalf of my command, as the leaders of this organization, we take full responsibility. We have often heard from communities that apologies alone are not sufficient, and we agree. It is also our responsibility to identify the systems and procedures that are causing or contributing to the disparate treatment of racialized people and to address it head on. We will do all we can to fix this. And some of this important work is already underway.
So I think that that's a pretty bad response from the police chief on racial discrimination happening over and over and over consistently for the last, well, forever. And I think that actions to fix this should start with removing the police chief from his command. You just can't let somebody stay in a position like that if the entire system that they're in control of is as systemically racist as the Toronto Police Service is. You can't leave somebody like that in control of a system. So the Toronto City Council, or whoever actually appoints the police chief, if that's, I believe it's by the city, those people should, take action against the police chief. There's also the situation in which Toronto is significantly over-policed in comparison to most other places, at least in Canada. And so reducing funding for the Toronto Police Service would also be another top priority, I would imagine, if the city actually cares. And we've seen the Toronto Police involved in very violent behavior against normal citizens in their city. This is nothing new. This is just always how it is there. And I know a lot of Canadians are going to see this and go, wait, what? We don't have a problem with this. No, we actually do have a problem with this. We do. It's not as common, and it's not as visceral, I think, might be the right word. Because it's rare enough that when it happens, it's like, whoa, that happened in Canada. But it's also like, no, this happens all the time. We just don't see it because we don't have as free of a media as there is in the States. So, yeah, let's keep talking. Let's keep watching.
Meanwhile, the president of the Toronto Police Association suggests the findings don't paint a complete picture.
We have no context for this data. We have no idea what the situation was, which involved the officers having to resort to use of force. I can tell you that our officers are some of the best trained in North America. You have to keep in mind, they have particular policies, guidelines, strategies. They are directed by the service on what they need to do and what their job is.
So they're just going to react to the rest of this. I think you want to see my reaction, not CP24's reaction. So the Toronto Police Service is a racist organization that is using traditional policing techniques against its citizenry And you have the police association, the police union saying, well, we don't know. It could have been completely justified. But the point here isn't whether or not the actual use of force itself in individual cases is justified. It's whether it's being used in a disproportionate manner against, underrepresented communities. So, just because an individual police officer's interaction with an individual Toronto citizen was legal and was proper, and could even be justified to me, or to, your average person, that doesn't, we're not talking about those situations. We're talking about why it's so disproportionately targeted towards Black, Indigenous, Latino, Asian people, rather than everybody being relatively close. Because this is based on population, not based on total. I think that, you can call out systems and say that maybe individual officers in individual situations did the right thing. That happens. That does happen. Not very often, but it does happen. So in those situations, we do need to say, yeah, they did the right thing. They helped. That's not what we're talking about right now. We're not talking about bad apples. We're talking about a bad system. We're talking about a system that discriminates disproportionately against racialized minorities. We're not really talking about the amount or the justification of the violence itself. Because if proportionality was out the window here, as it looks like the police association is trying to say here, then statistics don't mean anything. So I think that this is probably a little bit worse than it appears. And it's also going to be pushed a little bit under the rug here, because the problem hasn't been flashy news stories about individuals doing bad things to individual citizens. It's just broad systemic violence against underrepresented communities. You can agree with that. If you do, you're probably a racist. If you disagree with that, well, then join us. Abolish the police, defund the police, send those resources that are being used to community centers, community service workers, people that need help, mental health. If we're talking about overrepresentation of force being used against different populations, maybe we need to talk about why that is. Are different communities in really bad living conditions and therefore are subject to higher levels of poverty, which then leads to higher levels of crime? Well, okay, that's one way to look at it, but then we have to talk about why that group of people is in that situation to be so heavily in the situation that they'd be in poverty. It's, again, systemic issues. Yes, are there individual causes for why somebody may or may not end up in poverty? Yes, of course. Of course there are. But that doesn't mean that every single person in poverty is there by their own choice or by their own decision making. So I think that if we talk about justice in policing, we also have to talk about justice in economic outcomes. And that's not where most liberals and conservatives are even really willing to talk about. And I think it's important to talk about both sides of this. You can't talk about police reform and police justice without talking about economic reform and economic justice. We need a better system that works for more people and takes money away from those at the top and the elites and puts that money back in the hands of individual people, everyday citizens, and give communities more autonomy over how they are policed and how they are regulated. Because I think that in these situations where we see over-policing, some of the solutions might literally be local community groups, local churches, local nonprofit organizations, doctors, mental health workers, social workers, organized labor, any of these groups can jump in and actually take a role in safety and security of the city, of your neighborhood. And you don't need the police to do this. You really don't. So I'm going to end it there. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will be trying to make more of these. So if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, check out my website, laborliberty.ca, for more videos and more topics. And until next time, guys, have yourselves a fantastic, fantastic day. Peace.